Remind me, Michael. I got a big post-it note and I totally missed it.
I just wanted to alert everyone that we will be recording. So by staying on, you're agreeing to that?
Yep.
So, and just a few things. If you need, well, there's only 4 of us right now. So I think we can, we don't have to worry about raising hands. Just feel free to jump in at any point. We want this to be a discussion, not a presentation. And if anyone does join us, is anyone joining us via phone? I don't think so, right?
No.
So, okay, we don't have to worry about that because there are instructions for that as well, but I don't think we have to worry about that. So.
All right, well, I guess I can share my screen. We have a couple of guided, oh, here we go. Get some more folks.
Hi, Connie.
Hello there. I'm not Connie, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry. You just play her on Zoom?
Hello there. I do just play her on Zoom. That's exactly it. I'm a representative of the Greater Rockwell organization. Connie is our president, and she forwarded her invitation. Great. So I just saw that I was listed under her name. Okay. My name is Lucinda.
Lucinda, okay.
Yes, it's good to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. And Ellie and Brian, thank you so much. Should we just get started, Rob?
Yeah.
So my name's Michael Berkshire, and I'm a regional planner with the North Region. And also with us tonight is Rob, who you heard from earlier from Site Design. So we have just a couple of slides to go through, and then we also have some questions that we'd like to ask, some polling questions that we'd like to get your feedback on. So that next slide, Rob.
Yeah.
So just in terms of, this is the way you can interact with us tonight. You can use the online polling. So you just follow the instructions on the top of the screen. Can everyone see those instructions at this point? Okay.
Oh, they'll pop up when we get to that slide.
Okay. And then, of course, feel free to jump in and ask any questions, but if you prefer to, ask your questions or provide feedback via the chat function, that's great too, because we'll be actually recording all of those, everything in the chat and keeping track of that. And then, of course, we already talked about the raising hands. Let's not worry about that. Let's just have a discussion. So.
Perfect.
And in terms of, just some basic principles for the conversation, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. We want everyone to be, we want to be inclusive and to listen to all voices. We're going to embrace any productive tensions, and we can respectfully disagree, but we want to hear from everyone, and we want to hear, your truths and your experiences, and that we all want to communicate in good faith. So,
right.
So just a kind of little icebreaker. So which part of the corridor are each of you most familiar with? Let's just make sure this is all working. So if you just follow in the instructions.
Yeah, so if you go to the website at the top, www.pollev.com, and then type in sustainable 848. They'll ask for your name, and then you can click through. And it took a second to get this to work last time, so hopefully it's a little less temperamental tonight. I'll just give you all a minute to there.
Oh, Lucinda, you changed your name. Okay.
I did. I thought that might be helpful.
While we're waiting for this, would everyone mind just kind of quickly introducing yourself and what your interaction with Western Avenue is? Do you work? Do you live? Do you recreate on Western Avenue?
I'll go first. I live just west of the river, down by Montrose. So I mean, I transit over it, but you know, Lincoln Square is kind of the biggest area, but we also go to Waveland Bowl when we can. So
Excellent.
kind of between Lawrence and Irving a lot.
Yeah, great. Ellie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I am from Chicago. I'm from like Peterson in California is kind of where I live. And I'm actually running the Instagram account for
Oh,
this
that's right.
study. Yeah.
Yes.
And sustainability is like one of my favorite things to learn about. So that's why I wanted to be in this group.
Great. Thank you, Ellie. We appreciate your help with this.
Of course.
Lucinda?
Apologies. Oh, am I on? Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep. Yep, we can hear you.
I live very close to the Rockwell Brown line, and which is right next to the Western Brown line. So that's really the heart of my life. I have taken, well, in the before times, and having lived in this neighborhood for nearly 18 years, I've taken the Brown line from the Rockwell station nearly every day for 18 years.
Excellent.
And then there was a time when the Brown line was under construction. So I would walk to the Western station. That was 10 years ago.
Mm.
So yes, that's really the core of my regular life.
That's great. Is that a at grade station, or is that still elevated at Rockwell?
Rockwell is the very first one toward
Mhm.
the end of the Brown line. Yes, that's.
I love that station.
And
Yeah.
I take Francisco. So
Francisco has the beautiful tiling, the floor.
well, yeah, it's breaking up. It's falling apart, but it has the old station house as well.
Great. Okay.
As
Well,
a different group. You can't.
well,
All right.
It looks like
Great,
we have everyone's. Thank you for that.
That's me down there by the Addison part. I'm at the far end here. Sorry, I tested.
Okay. Okay. So another discussion point. What is the most pressing issue regarding resilience and sustainability along the corridor in your minds?
I mean, when I think of Western, I just think of pollution. I just think of so much traffic. It's frankly kind of ugly. I mean, the roadway itself, the pedestrian experience. Anytime we walk to Lincoln Square, we're crossing at Wilson. And the crossing on Wilson, it's like if you're there when the light changes, great. If you're there 10 seconds later, it's such a huge roadway. You're just going to wait for the next light cycle.
Right. Anyone else want to share their thoughts? And this is just more of an open-ended, whatever your experiences are. Okay.
I definitely say like the canopy cover. Like I think when Rob was talking about how they would add more biodiversity and canopy, I think that's a great idea because I think that also adds to what Brian was talking about with pollution and just the ugliness. I feel like it would help with aesthetics and with the sustainability factor too.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about trees because they have so many benefits. They're a major tool in terms of managing stormwater in a better way. They help absorb more of the rainfall that falls, but they also are, extremely helpful in terms of mitigating urban heat island issues because of the shade that they provide. But then also they soak in a lot of carbon. So they're helpful in many ways, as well as aesthetically, and improving the pedestrian environment along the
When I think about a pretty Western, it's south of Addison that was redone the 5 or so years ago. But then I have concerns along there because a lot of trees were planted, but there's more than a handful that have died or been removed. I mean, there's probably 20% of the trees that were planted down there are not there anymore.
Right.
And is there a plan to replace them, or are we expecting that 20% of trees will go in the first 5 years and then another 20 in the next 5 years? I mean, in 25 years, we're not going to have any of those trees left. So then
Right.
it's going to look like Northwestern Avenue. So
Correct.
that maintenance of these sustainable features is also a concern.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, I think we talked about this on the last call, but urban trees don't last very long typically. Like I think Michael, we were saying like about a 12-year lifespan on an urban tree sometimes is what we expect. And replacement is obviously a huge issue too, right? And maintenance. And I think what's been really exciting, at least as an outsider or quasi-outsider that doesn't work for the city, is that this new commission that the city's developed to really address urban canopy that just got approved a few months ago. I'm hoping we'll start to address a lot of these issues because it's hard to keep up, right? There's a lot of trees, but there should be a lot more.
I don't know if this is there's a thing. There's a lot of sections in that south of Addison area where there's large groupings, maybe 6, 8, 10, 12 trees all planted close together, and handfuls of those have gone away. But is planting larger, more mature trees, but less of them, would that help their lifespan from being just 12 years? Maybe it lets them be a little sturdier before winter, before everything else. And even if there's less of them, if they last longer, ultimately we get more benefit.
Yeah, and I'll defer to Rob since he's the landscape expert. But what we found in the research in terms of the city is that, the average lifespan of these parkway trees is 10 to 12 years. And what we feel would be one of the best ways to lengthen the life of these trees would be to provide more soil per tree. So we would have a requirement of so much cubic feet of soil per tree to lengthen the life and also have these trees be more healthy. So I don't know if it's the amount of the number, but it's the amount of soil that it's put in.
I'll just speak to the tree size. It's actually a little bit counterintuitive. It's almost like just like a person, right? Like when you're young, you can bounce back from injury, right? Pretty easily. It's like the same thing with the tree. Younger trees transplant much easier and are much more resilient when they go in, and they also grow very fast. A tree's growth rate, kind of peters out as it gets older, right? But when they're very young, they grow much faster. And so you can put a very small tree and it can catch up to a bigger tree that may have been planted a couple inches bigger very quickly. But it also handle issues. So that's why you see a lot of the smaller trees, especially in street trees early on.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But I think a great recommendation coming out of this study, because we've heard a lot about the health and the maintenance associated with any landscaping, is that we make sure that, again, any new landscapes and any new trees that are planted have an adequate amount of space and soil to grow in, but also then are maintained over the long term. So, okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay, all of these are photos that you saw earlier on strategies for helping to lower urban temperatures along the corridor. So what we'd like to do now is have a little polling question on which of these strategies would you like to see along the corridor?
If you're still on the poll everywhere piece, it should pop up now and you'll get a new set of items here. So you can click on the picture and I believe you can select all that apply, 1, 2, 3.
And if anybody has any questions about any of these, feel free to ask. So.
It says this poll is locked, and I don't
Oh
know
my
if I'm.
gosh. No, not anymore.
There
Sorry
we go.
about that.
I have a question about the kind of boulevard look,
Hmm.
which is gorgeous. My first thought is when visibility in the opposite lane is obstructed. Okay, I may be balancing multiple priorities here, but for those businesses that a driver then cannot see that are across the street, is there any data to know if that impacts? Is that making sense? Like as
Yeah.
I look at B
Yeah.
and I'm driving, I wouldn't necessarily know exactly where the business is that I'm aiming for if it is across the street, or maybe unsafely my attention might be drawn to a business that I then want to go to, but I would only see it if I'm on the same side of the street as that business.
I'm not aware of any data. Are you, Rob?
I haven't seen any studies related to that. I mean, most of the studies that we have come across usually kind of tout the financial benefits of street trees and what that impact can be for local businesses. And so there's a lot of research that's been done around that. I have not seen a study though that, you know, has concerns about medians and sightlines across the street for adjacent businesses. I know it's really important when you locate them, obviously for safety reasons, where they get placed in relationship to intersections and turn lanes to make sure that we don't create any unsafe conditions. But that's a really good question. I'm actually kind of curious. I was thinking from a design standpoint, we get this a lot when I work with real estate developers. They're always very concerned about being able to see the storefronts, right? So you can see the sign, see the activity, don't put any plants in front of the storefronts. And so, you know, part of that is making sure the trees are taller. You know, it's almost like that Southwestern Avenue, Brian, you were mentioning earlier, south of Addison. You know, that's actually like a median, but it's just trees and the pavement, right? It's not like this lush landscape median, so you can see through it a lot easier.
Yeah,
but
and I'm thinking about like Irving Park Road, kind of west of the river, especially like west of Kedzie, has some planted medians, and I think there's low things like grasses, and then the tall trees, and so you do get a visible strip in the middle. You know, I drive a low car and I can still see over it.
Yeah.
So I think there still is fairly good visibility between that.
Yeah. And Lucinda, that is a very interesting question. And I'd like to hear from everyone, like, how many people do you think are driving, you know, down Western, not knowing exactly where they're going or looking for a place to eat or to shop? Because, you know, especially in the future where I think even more people will be using wayfinding, you know, things to get them to a place. Do you think that will be as important in the future? Or do you think that most people know exactly where they're going on Western? And that's a question for you guys since you live close. And
personally, I am one who takes Western just to get to a different place. I'm rarely taking Western to go to something on Western, especially something I don't know about on Western.
Okay. But I get it that, you know, that's often what I hear is that, you know, I don't want a tree in front of my business because they won't be able to see my sign. So. Okay.
Yeah, this came to mind because it just happened to me, that I didn't realize that there is a cobbler, a shoe repair that is on Western. There's a place I knew about over on Damon and Lawrence, but I didn't know that I had one closer to me for some shoe repair. And I was literally just driving past and saw the sign across the street.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we have pretty much a tie for the top two, and then kind of an even score after that. Okay, then.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. What's going on here? Sorry about that, folks. We jumped all sorts of slides here. We just did that one. This is the next one. I'm sorry.
Okay. This one, do you agree with the draft planning principle to address chronic stormwater flooding through a systems approach of best management practices? So I think this is saying, you know, a series of best management practices rather than just a one-off strategies just here and there sprinkled around. So I think everyone agrees, yeah. That would be a tough one to disagree with, right?
So I had the previous slide would have been interesting to have it arranged by order of most to least interested, because I put down permeable pavement as number one, and the city back in the 90s when they started the Green Alley program was talking a big game of permeable pavement and permeable asphalt, and frankly has done a pretty pitiful job of utilizing that. I mean, there's very few parks with permeable pavement. I mean, I know that Pritzker Park downtown installed permeable concrete, but you know, I can't name other parking lots in the neighborhood that are park district or city lots that have permeable pavement. I can name a couple business strip malls, especially along Western. There's the strip malls right by Waveland Bowl that added it, but I think permeable pavement should be used more by the city. And I personally would like if it became more of a requirement, especially for strip malls. I don't see any reason why a strip mall is paving with asphalt nowadays. I just don't see any.
Yeah, good point. The city, I'm sorry, Lucinda?
Is it expensive? I don't know.
Well,
initially, yes, but they last a lot longer. They last like 40 years, and the parking lot would need to be paved every 10 years or something. So it's one of those where initially, yes, but in the long run, and that's entirely discounting all the environmental benefits as well.
Right. And the other interesting thing is that if it's a rather large parking lot, that the because it takes care of more stormwater, there's a smaller detention tank underneath the parking lot that is required by the stormwater ordinance sometimes. So that savings from building a smaller tank can almost offset the additional cost of the permeable pavers. But it's a matter of scale. So.
Hey, Michael, we got, it looks like just under 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
We got 3 questions. Actually, you can probably get through pretty quickly. I wouldn't mind seeing everyone.
This one's really important, especially since you all live close. Where do you experience the most amount of I would call it urban flooding? So both street flooding as well as your neighbors that are, have sewage backup in their basements. Do you know of any particular areas along the corridor that suffer the most from those things?
The flooding in my neighborhood is pretty bad. Like in West Ridge, in between Western and California, it's pretty bad everywhere there. Anytime there's a big storm, all of the neighborhood streets surrounding Western are flooded.
I do not really experience it except at the intersections with the catch basins that need to be cleaned out or cleared.
Great.
Yeah, I'm of no help here, so I could indicate only because I saw on an earlier slide where West Ridge is. I could second Ellie's comments, but I don't know firsthand.
No, this is helpful. Okay. But the intersections are what we hear are the worst. So, okay. Next one. Okay. And again, this is another of all of these
What Brian was getting
strategies. Pardon me?
This is the one that Brian was getting at earlier that he wanted to see.
Yeah, exactly. So of these strategies to, better manage stormwater, what are your preferences along this corridor?
The green roofs is hard to implement because that requires property owners. Whereas, the street itself, the pavers on the sidewalk is a no-brainer. I liked hearing that pavers, permeable pavement for the parking lane was being considered. The bioswales are nice. The ones along Lawrence that were added 5, 6, 7 years ago, those are nice.
So is the polling available? There we go.
Are there many alleys that connect to Western directly? I think most of them probably enter off side.
Yeah. I think that's true.
There's a lot north of Peterson, a lot of alleys that go directly onto Western.
Okay. My alley is falling apart. It's rutted, it's whatever, and I'm trying hard to get my alderman to replace it with a green alley, but it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah, they have to use their menu money for that. So, and we do have about 18 seconds left. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to have some more focus groups coming up, either late August, early September, and they're going to be geographically based. So we're really going to dive into different geographies. So I really hope that all of you can join us. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
We got 20 seconds left, and I'll just say, please interact with Ellie on the Instagram. She's very excited about it. So this is a little bit newer thing, I think, for the city, really on the social media for specific projects. So
tell all your viewers.
I just followed. I'll tell people.
I saw that, Lucinda. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Lucinda.